We'll get this meeting started because we have a lot to do. I'm already behind. If everyone would take a seat, please, and stop the conversations. This is the Berryessa Citizens Advisory Council. We meet here every month except usually July and August. Berryessa Citizens Advisory Council was the only neighborhood association on the ballot supporting the San Jose Arena when we were trying to get it in many years ago. It's now the SAP Center. So BCAC has been around for 50 years. This is our 50th anniversary. So tonight we're dispensing with, we're not going to do the minutes or the financial report. We're going to get busy right away. The police officers I don't think are here yet. If law enforcement shows up, we'll put them on eventually after the sheriff. And tonight we have a presentation from the sheriff's department, from the fire station, I don't know where we are, from the fire station, and Captain Jeff Deem will be introducing his men and telling us what his presentation is about tonight. So if you would come up.
Everybody, how are you doing? Good, thanks for having us tonight. We're San Jose Fire Department, Station 19. We're from right down the street in the corner of Piedmont and Sierra Road. My name's Jeff Deem. I'm the captain on Engine 19. We have 3 shifts at in our fire department, A, B, and C. This happens to be the A shift today. And I have with me fire engineer Mark Butita. Engineer in fire department terminology is a driver or an apparatus operator. This is fire engineer Mark Butita. We have firefighter paramedic Jake Rubinson. And we have a second engineer, fire engineer James Young. And in a little bit, we'll talk about why we have 2 drivers at our station and the apparatus that we have there. But thank you. We're on our second day. We work a 48-hour shift. So we work 4 days on, 2 days on, 4 days off. And a lot of times it's 3 or 4 days on and then 2 days off, depending on our staffing right now. So we're happy to be here. Thanks for inviting us. It's important that we're here because we are part of the community. We live down the street, like I said, for 48 hours at a time. We have 3 shifts, so there's somebody there 24/7, 365. This is a great way where we can unify the community. We can be part of the community because we're your neighbors. We're not just a fire department down the street. So we appreciate you having us here tonight. And thanks for thinking about us and inviting us. Tonight, we're going to talk very quickly because we are in service, available for calls, and we don't want to take up too much time. So we have 4 topics. We're going to talk about the apparatus at our station and its capabilities. We'll have a brief discussion on living in the wildland urban interface, which is a lot of what Station 19's first due area. And then we're going to talk about some medical call related items such as advanced directives, which are like do not resuscitate orders, and a pulsed form, which you'll learn about. And then we'll follow that up with a document and a product called Life File, which is something that you keep on your refrigerator at home that has information that helps us, your loved ones, and other people in the house if we come for a medical emergency. So to start it off, I'm going to let James Young come up. He's going to talk about the apparatus and the capabilities that we have at Station 19 and why they're at that particular station.
Good evening, everyone. Name's James Young. I'm a fire engineer, Station 19, just down the road on Piedmont. At Station 19, we have a little bit different setup than some other fire stations around the area. We have a fire engine, which you see out front. We also have a smaller brush patrol, which is what we use as a first line attack for wildland fires up in the hills. That's one of the reasons we're up here and have that piece of equipment, is to have quick and fast access, approximately like 300 gallons of water to get into the hills and knock down these fires, which are threatening. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in depth later on with how we react with the wildland interface. So besides the fire engine out front, which is pretty typical of most of the stations within San Jose. That's 500 gallons of water, lots of hose, a little bit of tools, mainly for immediate response to a house fire where we can get entry quickly by maybe breaking in through a door or something like that. And we do have a complement of small ground ladders also. But our main job in that engine is to get to our first due in this area as quick as possible and get water on the fire. So we're gonna drop hose lines, get a fire hydrant, and get as much water as possibly onto a fire to extinguish it as quickly as we can. We also have a complement of medical equipment. The overwhelming majority of our calls are medically related. So we have paramedic and we have emergency equipment. So we can get ALS personnel, advanced life-saving personnel, to the scene of a medical response under 5 minutes. So medication, electricity, and manpower to help out as quick as possible. Once again, the brush patrol is mainly for the hills and the creeks and any kind of vegetation fires we have. We have 300 gallons of water on our brush patrols. We have 4-wheel drive capability. We have winching ability to pull vehicles out of distress if possible. But mainly, like I said, that is a initial attack on wildland interface fires. That's basically the complement of our Station 19. 4-piece people, 2 engineers driving both the rigs at all time, and then a captain who's leading us, and our medic. So from there, I think we're gonna go on to Wildland Interface with Captain Jeff Dean. Thank you.
Thanks, James. So we'll talk about now transitioning from the complement of apparatus we have, especially, you know, the wildland urban interface to 4-wheel drive is really helpful in these conditions because we can get into the Alum Rock Park, we can go off-road, we can get fires that are in fields where our typical apparatus can't go. But I wanted to just talk about how you can also help prepare yourself living in the wildland urban interface and what you can do to make your home better prepared if a wildland fire should come your direction. And, you know, some things involved with design and construction is, of course, composition roofing is very important. Stucco siding is fire resistant. You want to have 100-foot clearance around your house from vegetation. Make sure that you're mowing your vegetation, but not on our red flag days. We don't want to be mowing. You know, vegetation should be cut down to about 4 inches high with that 100-foot defensible space. Keep the dead leaves and things out of your gutters. Cut the branches that hang over your roofs. These are like ladder fuels. They go from the small bushes to the branches that hang down, then they work up, and the burning material then falls on your roof. Having a spark arrestor on your chimney, which is like a 1/4-inch non-combustible mesh that keeps the embers from going out the chimney and lighting other things on fire. We don't want to be involved in a wildland fire, but we also don't want to be the individual responsible for starting a wildland fire, like mowing on red flag days or having a fire in our fireplace without a spark arrestor on our chimney. Access, very important up here in the hills. Make sure that your neighborhood has the street signs, that they're up. They're visible. They're not blocked by shrubs or trees so we can see the streets. We don't know how to get to every house, so we rely on maps, GPS, and pulse point programs to get us to certain addresses. Your address on your house should be visible, and it should be visible at night. It should be a contrasting color from the color of your house and be a minimum of 3 inches high. And that allows us to find your house and find the appropriate address. And also have 2 escape routes planned. If you live somewhere in the hills, maybe at the end of Clater Road, and your primary access that you drive out is blocked, your secondary means of escape may be through Alum Rock Park on foot. And you want to identify this ahead of time. So have 2 escape routes leading out of your house. You know, and if you have a long driveway, again, the overhanging bushes, the trees, the shrubs, some of our apparatus is about 10 feet high. And if we have large limbs or anything blocking our access, we're not going to be able to get down there unless we, one, get a chainsaw and remove the limbs that are in the way, or we might have to take our equipment off and go in on foot. And of course, landscaping plays a large role, that 100-foot clearance when possible, 30 feet at a minimum. There are a variety of non-combustible landscaping items out there, manzanita, ice plant, things of that nature that you can plant around your house that aren't combustible. And then just touching base on the yard. We have a lot of, fireplaces, still wood burning fireplaces. Don't store your firewood next to the house or under your porch. Store it at least 30 feet away from the house, because if a fire reaches that, it becomes a really large fire with that firewood. We're gonna have to move that ourselves, get it away from the house. And I'm not sure, I know the further you go up Sierra Road, there are some people that are reliant on propane tanks. They don't have natural gas through PG&E. Just make sure that your vegetation is cut around from those propane tanks, that it's a good distance away from any structures or your house. A lot of them are on concrete pads. Make sure that those aren't covered up with vegetation as well. So we take all this stuff into account, and if a wildland fire is threatening your home or in the area of a home, it becomes our job to then triage those homes. So we have to identify which homes have been prepared enough to defend and which ones have not been prepared enough to not defend. And that's a judgment call when the fire is coming. So if our access is impeded, or you don't have water supply on your street, or you have a bridge that doesn't have a weight rating on it, we're not going to cross it. So the better prepared your property is, the better we have a chance of defending that house and preventing it from fire getting to it. And then I have some material I'll leave on the back that goes a little further into depth on landscaping, having what they call a go bag, have a backpack with things that are ready to go, like eyeglasses, prescriptions, anything like that. And then also be prepared to be sufficient for about 72 hours with food and water in case power goes out and you're not able to get to the store, the ATM, and or if your access is blocked by fire or down trees or anything like that. But we're gonna leave plenty of material back there with checklists and reference material for how you can be prepared to live in the wildland urban interface. And we're gonna transition now to just what a majority of our calls are the medical component. So we wanted to talk about advanced directives, and we wanted to talk about an item called Life File. And I'm gonna turn that over to Jake Rubinson.
Hi, Jake Rubinson, firefighter, paramedic here at 19 on the B shift. I just wanted to touch real quick on a couple forms that we commonly encounter when we enter people's homes for medical needs. So just for everyone, advanced directives. So an advanced directive is a legal document that lays out your wishes for how you would like your healthcare to be taken care of in the event that you cannot make those decisions for yourself. There's a couple forms associated with those. Living will is something you would set up on your own for yourself prior to that time in a healthcare setting. We don't deal with those too much typically, but what we do deal with is the other form of an advanced directive, which is a power of attorney, which you may be familiar if you have a loved one who has designated you as a power of attorney. That means that in an event that they cannot make a decision for themselves, they have designated you the person that they would like to make those decisions. And we deal with that quite a bit. Point of this topic is to encourage everyone, if you are a power of attorney, to have that form readily available when we get there. What we encounter a lot of the time is if you are a power of attorney for someone maybe on hospice care, and maybe you call because you just want them helped being moved, if you don't have that form with you, we are legally obligated to transport that patient to the hospital. They will be removed from hospice care and you'll have to start that whole process over again. So if anything that they want done in that power of attorney document, we just have to see it. So again, yeah, make sure you have it available. We'll touch more on that later, but nearby and on the refrigerator is a good spot. Yeah, another form we deal with quite a bit is the PULSE, or Physician's Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. It's a big, bright pink form signed by a doctor, orders for us in an emergency setting for what you'd like done to you in the event that you stop breathing. That's another one that's really very important for you to have in that emergency setting if you know a loved one that might be nearing the end of their life. Because again, I know it's a very difficult topic to talk about, and there's a whole process of going to the doctor, getting it signed, and you would just hate to be in that situation where we get there and we ask for it and you know they have one, but you just don't know where it is. It's something we encounter actually quite a bit. It's very difficult for everyone involved. So what we recommend is we have a little pouch, or just have it available. Most people, the refrigerator is a great place. We always look on the refrigerator first stapled to there or in one of these pouches. So I have some copies in the back as well, but yeah, that's not an official one. The official one has to be bright pink, signed by your doctor. He's the only one who can give it to you. So yeah, and with more on that, I have Engineer Batita here.
Hi, Mark Butita, I'm an engineer. I've actually been at Station 19 for 15 years now, so I'm pretty familiar with most of the neighborhoods out here. So what we're going to talk about is when we show up on medical calls, there's always, not always somebody there that can help us with the patient's history. So if the patient's home alone, or if there's a family member there that maybe doesn't know all their medical history, it's hard for them to relay that to us. And it's very important for us to be able to treat somebody if we know what some of their underlying causes of the reason that they called for, right? If they have a heart condition or breathing conditions or anything else. So what we have is these little folders. These are called life files. So basically what you can do for you or your family members, we have some forms back there. You can fill out a form. It'll basically talk about medications you may be on, what kind of medical history you have, any allergies to medications. All those things are very important for us to be able to treat people prior to them getting to the hospital. A lot of times, even though the hospital may have your information and stuff, we don't. So these things are great for us. You fill out the little form. The form is back there. You can stick them in here. If you have a DNR or a pulse like Jake was talking about, that can go in here also. And then what we want is we want these on the refrigerator. So we'll typically come in, we'll look, and if we see these, we can pull these out and then get all your information, which is really helpful for us so that we can treat you guys a little bit quicker, and more accurate. So with that, I think we're going to open it up to any questions for any of us. If you guys have any questions you want to ask us. Yeah. Yeah, the vial of life. The vial of life was basically the same thing, but people kept them usually like inside their freezer. So these are a little bit easier for us. We want them on the front of the refrigerator. They're a little bit easier for us to find. That way we're not going through your freezer. They don't get lost. And we usually,
look in the refrigerator.
yeah.
They're in the county, they're not doing them anymore, so you might have some that still exist, but this is what we're transitioning to.
Yeah, so this is the new, is what we're doing now.
The HIPAA document?
HIPAA is just
Yeah.
concerns privacy.
Yeah.
Your rights to your own medical records and history being private. It's not really a form that we look at though, no. I'm not sure if you're.
There's a document that we abide by.
Right.
But it's a privacy, we won't share your information or anything with you. There are certain criteria that we're not allowed to share. And there's certain criteria that we can. So if we go beyond that, it's a HIPAA violation, they call it. But there's certain information we can share pertinent to saving your life that's acceptable. Yeah.
These? Yes, the fire departments, most of our stations, the San Jose stations should have these. If not, we have the forms and we have some back there. So if you guys want to grab, we're going to leave some. But also I believe on the form, there's a phone number that you can call. So if you go to a station, they don't have it. So if you want to grab one of those forms, you can call that number and you can get more of these if need be.
Yeah, the Santa Clara County website has a whole page dedicated to the pulse, the advanced directives, the life file, contact information where you can get them. They have the form that goes inside the life file online, so you can print it out right in your house and fill it out. So you have multiple forms for everybody in your house. And everything I talked about tonight too is available. The checklist is from CAL FIRE's website. It's used throughout the entire state. There's information on the Santa Clara County website for vegetation management and clearances, as well as the San Jose Fire Department website. So all that's accessible for further research and education as well.
And even if you guys don't get one of these make it easy for us to identify. But a lot of times people just write down a list of their medications and health problems and have that on their refrigerator. So even just a piece of paper with something that helps us to help you guys. So even if you don't have one of these, it's nice to have a written list of all your medications. A lot of times we come in and people don't have that. And we start asking family members, well, what medications? And the family members don't really know. And then they hand us a shoebox with like 30 different medications in it. So then we got to kind of go through and see which ones are duplicates and is this yours or is this your husband's or whatever, so we have to sort through everything. So having everything written down really makes it a lot more efficient for us.
So really everything we talked about tonight was not only how we can help you and serve you better, but also how you can help us serve you more efficiently. Because we can focus more on the fire or the patient care because we've all done our part to work together. And that's why I thank you again for having us here tonight. And we love being part of this community, and thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. That's great information. I'm gonna rush home and get that put together. My granddaughter came over a couple of months ago. We had an emergency with my husband. So she put everything on the phone, all his medical issues, all his medicine. It's all on my phone now. So he can't use the phone, but I'll have it. But my husband had been in the hospital for a month, came home for Christmas. A couple days later, the home nurse came and examined him. She made a face and then she said, let me go check the medication. Let's look at that and then I'll come back. She came back, she says, listen to him again. And she said, call 911. He has to go back to the hospital. So the fire department came right away because we're close. That was just great. But he had to go back to the hospital. But we had everything. We had all the papers and stuff. So it really is nice. But to put him someplace where you can grab everything is really nice too. Very, very helpful. So thank you so much, fire department, for being here tonight. We got a lot of information. They've left the table back there with information on there so you can get it at the end of the meeting. You don't have to get up now if you don't want to. The police department is here. Captain Sanchez is here, right? Is that right? Or did he go out again? Went out with the fire department? Oh, he just stepped out. Okay. So, and the sheriff is here also. I mean, not the CHP officer is here. So eventually they will get here. You don't want me to be singing. We could sing a little song while we're waiting. Oh, yeah, we got a call. Okay. So they'll be in a second. Is Jamal here? I was looking for Jamal Khan. Is he here yet tonight? Didn't see him. Okay, what else can we do? The mayor will be here shortly. Tonight when we go, the presentation will be facilitated by our council member, David Cohen. There'll be questions and answers. There'll be presentations made by the mayor and his staff. And you can ask questions and answers, not statements. We won't be having statements of any sort. So, but just more information. We can put our 2 cents worth into their $1 billion that they have for budget. So it'll be kind of fun. Did he come in? Not yet? Oh, okay. Let me see. Let me do the announcements then. Our next general meeting is June 12th. And we have an August event to have our 50th anniversary celebration. I was going to say wedding anniversary, but mine's more than that. So this is 50, our anniversary for BCAC. So we'll be having a special event for that. We'll talk a little. Is he back? Okay, I can only see partially. Okay. All right, Captain Brandon Sanchez, our new captain for the area. Is he here? And is the sheriff here? DHP is here. Okay. Captain Oliver? Yay. Is he here? He's not here yet. Oh, you fill in. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm not Captain Oliver. I am Ross Lee. I'm the Public Information Officer for the San Jose CHP office. Captain Oliver had to run out for a quick call, but he should be coming back in. I will talk in his place in the meantime, and we can, if I run out of things to talk about, we can do any question and answer, anything at all like that. I can tell you guys, over the last month, there were 98 citations that we wrote in this area. The majority of those were for speed. April was Distracted Driving Awareness Month, so a lot of our enforcement efforts did focus on distracted driving. As we move into May, a big focus for us is the CHP, is for motorcycle safety. This is Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. So a lot of our efforts will be focused not only toward all the things that we typically do, coming out for any community complaints, any traffic complaints, normal regular enforcement, but also focusing on motorcycle safety, just training, awareness, and enforcement. Some things to remember and keep in mind. A lot of things that we get a lot of calls, typically when it comes to motorcycles, have to do with lane splitting. Lane splitting is legal in California. It does not mean that if traffic is moving at 65 miles per hour that a motorcycle can go 85 to split the lanes. There are certain safety regulations and things for them to keep in mind as a motorcycle rider. So if you were a motorcycle rider, that's something for you to keep in mind as well. Are there any questions about any CHP efforts or anything as we move into May? No? We can talk a little bit about some of our other safety efforts and our education efforts as well. We are hoping, we have reached out, a couple of the different classes that we do, and one of the ones that we're trying to bring to this side of town, we would hope to do is a program like the Age Well Drive Smart program. This is it's a class, typically runs about 3 hours, and it's just as a kind of a reminder for our drivers who are 65 and older. A lot of questions typically come up about things like, what is the process for renewing my license? How have some of the laws changed? Some of the things like that. And so that's something that we're hoping to try to bring to, if we can bring it here to the community center, that'd be fantastic. We do it in several locations all around the county. I actually have one tomorrow in Milpitas at the Barbara Lee Senior Center. Some of our other programs also are for driver safety and awareness. We continue to do the Start Smart program, which is held the first Wednesday of every month at our office. Those are for new drivers, typically ages 15 to 21. So if you have friends, family members, children or grandchildren, anybody who is getting ready to start driving, and either the young drivers themselves or parents have questions or concerns about what that process looks like for obtaining a license, or what the current laws are regarding the graduated driver licensing program for the GDL, things like that. You can reach out to our office and we'd be happy to put them in one of the classes that's coming up. We also are continuing to do things like the Teen Distracted Driver program, going into schools and talking with either schools in assembly style or like through a PTA with a parent and teacher type assembly, where we're talking to teens about the dangers of distracted driving. So these are some of the efforts that we are continuing to take from an education standpoint, so not just the enforcement, but education as well. Any questions on any of that? Yes? The new driver, so the Start Smart program? So we do those at our office in San Jose on the first Wednesday of every month in the evening. Yeah, typically it starts at 5:30 and goes about 2 hours. So it's about 5:30 to 7:30 typically. Any other questions? Anything I can answer? All right. Well, I do expect Captain Oliver will be coming back in. If there's anything that he would like to add, does he have an opportunity to come up and add that? Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you, guys.
Okay, the mayor has arrived, so we will start with that part. Councilmember David Cohen will be facilitating, so I will just get out of your way.
No, thank you, Linda. First, I want to thank our firefighters for being here. I always talk about District 4 being the most interesting district in the city, but I think we have 3 of the most interesting fire stations in the city. We have the one that deals with the fires in the Hill. We have the hazmat team at Station 29 in North San Jose, which is a really unique station, and the Alviso station, which deals with water rescue and highway. I mean, so we have a lot of very interesting things going on in our very well-staffed our great folks in our fire department. Keeping us safe. So I want to thank them. I think they might have already stepped out, but thank them for being here. You have a flyer on your, I'm going to just do a little shameless plug for our art festival on Saturday. You all have flyers on your chairs. It's going to be a great festival. We have a bunch of folks in this room who are on the committee organizing it, so they know all about what's happening. But we have one of our largest, I think, festivals that you've seen in a long time. Over 110, I think almost 110 booths reserved for this festival. It's going to be really, really good. The first 500 people who buy their 2 drink tickets will get a festival cup. And just be rest assured, even though it doesn't say Art and Wine Festival, there's still, I think, 6 varieties of wine, 4 varieties of beer, and plenty of food as well, besides all the art. So join us on Saturday, 10 to 4. All right, so now we're here for the main event tonight. I know the mayor's been going around the city meeting in all the districts to talk about the budget, and so we want to welcome him to District 4 to talk about the budget tonight. Just as a way of a little introduction on the budget, there's been talk about the $6 billion budget that we have to approve. About 70% of that $6 billion budget is committed to enterprise funds. It's not really money that we're talking about when we talk about approving the budget. The airport, the San Jose Clean Energy, the wastewater treatment plant, they're very large operations that take a lot of budget. A lot of that $6 billion is specific funds that money doesn't come in and out of, and that is meant for those operations. So we're left with about $1.5 billion of discretionary general fund money. And in reality, about 60% or more is already committed to a lot of things, and we're talking about 40% of that budget that's really discretionary that the council is dealing with. So a few $100 million is what we're going to be discussing as a council and how we allocate that money. And the mayor is going to show you his presentation. He has his 3 major priority areas, and I agree that those are areas that we need to invest extra in order to deal with the issues that we know our community cares a lot about. We also have a responsibility to continue to fund the fundamental functions of our city government, our roads, our lights, our libraries, our parks, and all the things that we do as a city that you all count on for your quality of life. So we're balancing all that together as we put the budget together, and you'll be hearing from the mayor tonight focused a little bit on his priorities, but about the overall budget picture that we're facing in the city. And then when we're done with that presentation, we're going to open it up to input from all of you about what you think about some of those priorities, what you would like us to focus on. I also would like to hear from you directly about things that are more specific to District 4. You can mention them tonight or reach out to our office. We also have a small pot of money that gets allocated to districts to do smaller projects around the district, like traffic improvements, crosswalks, some park enhancements, some of the smaller projects that we've been working on in our office. So let us know about what you'd like to see in the district, or talk to us a little bit about your big priorities for the city budget. So here's Mayor Mahan.
Thanks, Councilmember Cohen. Good evening. How are you all doing? Good. It's great to be here. That was the perfect setup. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being out here. I learned on the campaign trail that this community association is very active and engaged, and I just want you to know, and I'm sure Councilor Cohen feels the same way, we really appreciate that. I really believe our neighborhood and community associations and PTAs and HOAs and all those groups at the grassroots level are the foundation of our democracy. These are the places where we come together, discuss issues, learn, ask questions, connect with our elected officials, and without this activism and engagement, I think we'd get much worse outcomes in our government. So I appreciate you being engaged citizens. I really do. So I know I've got a lot of content to get through, so we are going to fly through it. I'm going to apologize in advance for how much content there is. We're going to save lots of time for questions, and I'm always available via mayor@sanjoseca.gov. We'll repeat that again at the end, but you can always email me and my team if you have specific follow-up questions. And as Councilmember Cohen said, we're a big city with a overall very large budget, $6 billion a year. We do a lot of different things. I am not even going to attempt to go into most of the things that most of our departments are doing. I'm going to make the case to you for focus and talk about where I am advocating for new spending. We're taking things that we funded as a pilot on a one-time basis and making it permanent. There's a lot of other exciting stuff we're doing. If you have a particular passion area, we can tell you what the city is doing in that area. But why don't we dive in? Stephen Noe on my team here is helping out. So where are we in the process? Well, we're about halfway through. The process kicks off in March with a budget message. I worked with Councilmember Cohen and a few of our other colleagues to put together that message, brought it before the council, we had some public hearings, and it was ultimately passed. City manager goes off and puts together she has the hard job, she puts together the 1,000-page detailed budget where every dollar goes, all the head count, how it all breaks down. That came out last week, and now we are going through a series of council budget sessions, and in parallel, we're doing community budget sessions, all leading to June, where I will put out a final message with any suggested revisions. The council will discuss, have the opportunity to modify that message, and then ultimately we need 6 votes. You probably know this. Every important decision at City Hall about budget or policy takes 6 or more votes, the majority of the council. That is our model. So I don't have a magic wand, though I wish I did. Okay, so I want to start with a little bit of context and just explain to you why I feel personally so strongly about the need to focus on fewer, more foundational things and push ourselves to try new things, to be more aggressive, and to move the needle to get different outcomes in a few key areas. One of those is that a very large proportion, a majority of local residents are frustrated. So much so that they're telling the Mercury News that they're thinking about leaving the area. I don't think they're all going to leave, but it just gives you a sense of the level of frustration that is out there. And what the polling shows over and over again is it's a few things. It's high cost of living, it's homelessness, it's crime, it's blight, so trash, graffiti, the way the city looks. It's a few things. Okay, let's keep going. Next slide. Okay, another reason for focus. We have pretty low revenue on a per capita basis. So our budget office put this together. This is property tax revenue. We're way down there. This is on a per person basis. Let's go to the next slide. Sales tax revenue. So I'm going to ask, the question is why? And I think looking at Cupertino here kind of gives it away. Anybody want to guess as to why Cupertino has $742 per year per person in sales tax revenue? Apple. One big company. The fundamental reason why we have lower revenue on a per person basis is that most of the jobs of Silicon Valley are actually not in San Jose. We're where most of the workforce sleeps and consumes services like libraries and parks and 911, police response, fire response, and so on. But most of them work in Cupertino and Palo Alto and Sunnyvale and Mountain View and Santa Clara. If we go to the next slide, you'll see an extreme example of this. Palo Alto has 3 jobs for every employed resident. We have just over 0.8. I think it's about 0.83. So we are, in fact, the only big city in America whose daytime population shrinks because a majority of our workers go work in other cities. Now, why does that matter? Well, they work at businesses and work in buildings that generate property tax revenue every year. They work at businesses that buy and sell things, generating sales tax revenue. And those employees tend to stick around and have breakfast, lunch, dinner, coffee, generating more sales tax revenue. So we have less revenue per capita, which again, to me, is another reason to really focus on the basics and recognize that we can't be everything to everyone. And then finally, third reason for focus in my view is that we've also got to grapple with the reality that we did not make the best decisions historically around meeting our obligations to city workers. Right now, every year, about 15% of our general fund, or $350 million a year, comes right off the top to go to our unfunded pension liabilities. Those are pension and healthcare costs for retirees, where we committed, but the funds didn't return what we expected. And we're not alone. There are school districts and your state, there are big holes all over the place. This is going to continue to be an issue. Now, fortunately, you all collectively, we as voters have put ourselves on a better path. That's the good news. We are going to pay this down and eventually get rid of that unfunded liability. The bad news is it's still about 20 years at the current rate to do that. It took us about a generation to get into that mess, and it's going to take about as long to get out. So to me, these are all reasons for recognizing that we have to be really disciplined, we have to be very fiscally responsible, we have to be really clear about our priorities. We can't afford to make a lot of big bets on moving the needle on a lot of different things. I could come here and tell you we're going to fix everything, but the reality is we probably need to pick 1, 2, max 3 things where we're really going to make a bet. And now I want to talk you through what I would argue we should bet on. What I have argued for is, and again, in addition to, I'm not talking about cutting everything we're currently doing, but with that new money we have and where we have opportunities to do more, I really think we need to focus in on the 3 things that at least I felt I heard from you all when I went around last year to every neighborhood in this city and knocked on thousands of doors and did about 400 neighborhood-based events. And what I heard over and over again was extreme frustration with crime, homelessness, and what you might call blight. So trash, graffiti, weeds that are 5 feet tall, all the rest. So here are some of the proposals in the budget that we'll be discussing that would specifically address those 3 issues. And then we're going to save plenty of time to get into all your questions on other issues you don't see represented here. Okay. Safest big city in America. We were once the safest big city in America. We should be once again. Okay, let's get into it. One of the biggest challenges we face on safety is just slow response times. You can see here, our target is the yellow line. That's our goal. That's our performance goal. And where the meter is how we're actually performing. And you can see priority 1 calls, very serious calls for service. So a crime in progress, a violent crime. We're even there on average, we're not even meeting our 6-minute response time. And then when you look at priority 2 calls, which is a larger volume of calls, we're more than double, almost 2.5 times our target. And that's an average number of minutes, which means some people are waiting an hour, hour and a half or longer with a still pretty significant public safety concern. I was surprised when I knocked on your doors how many people mentioned calling 911. We get over 1 million 911 calls a year and being frustrated with the response time. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why. This is fundamentally a staffing issue. Let's keep going. So the why here, actually, I'm going to talk about it right now, sorry, is we're very understaffed. So just give you a sense of proportionality, and I need to add this slide, but we have about 11 officers in San Jose for every 10,000 residents. Most other big cities have anywhere from 20 to 40. Now, we don't necessarily need 40. In fact, I would argue that we don't need 40. We're not Chicago, okay? But 11 is very low. In fact, just to put it in perspective, San Francisco has 15% fewer people, but more than 200%, more than twice as many officers. So we struggle with a lack of staffing. So one of the things my budget message called for was increasing the rate at which we hire officers. Okay. However, so we're going to do that, but we're not going to be able to spend all those dollars in year 1. We're going to use some of those dollars to invest in technology and marketing and better positioning the department in the long run. And here's why. There is a real challenge nationwide right now in attracting people into public safety careers and specifically police academies. You can see here, it's pretty shocking. Just go back 5 years, 10,000 applicants per year to our academies, and we're down to less than 1/5 of that number. So if we go to the next slide, one of the things that my budget message calls for is doubling our investment in campus outreach, marketing efforts, and technology to speed up applicant background checks. Sometimes you have applicants who are applying but then waiting 6 weeks to get an answer. And any of you who have hired in a competitive market like the tech industry know if you keep somebody waiting, they're going to go find another job. So we're using some of the one-time money that won't be used immediately to fill all those roles to make investments in recruiting and quite a bit in one-off technology investments as well. Let's keep going. This photo, we need to get a photo of me out with our CSOs, because what I'm actually, even though that's the chief, the idea here is to also expand something called our community service officers. One of the things we're interested in, and we can't do this alone as a city, we really need our partners at the county to invest with us in this, and they've been willing to some extent, is looking at alternative responses. I mentioned we have over 1 million calls for service per year. It's growing faster than our head count is in the department, but there are whole categories of calls for addressing homelessness and mental health issues and youth-related challenges where maybe we don't need the first responder to be an officer with a gun. So we're looking and we're talking to both our department and our police officers association, our police union, about what they're seeing in other departments around the country and how we can learn from other jurisdictions that have alternative responses. Had a number of meetings recently with the county because they hire health and human service workers, so those trained clinicians, for example. That's not something the city's going to do, but we've made very clear that we want to expand those offerings and partner with them, and where they would like it, have an officer provide backup, if you will. But we also have these community service officers who go through an academy and can provide foot patrols, can do a lot of the lower level non-kind of violent crime response. And so that's also an area where we're investing so we have more capacity. And they're just, frankly, easier to find, take less time to train, and cost us less. And so it's a balanced approach, looking at different ways of responding to different kinds of 911 calls. Let's keep going. This is another one where this is an example where we piloted something with a federal grant. It's worked incredibly well, and the money's gone. And so we have to say, well, it's not really new, but if we want to keep it, we've got a budget for it. And so the budget calls for keeping our 76 automatic license plate readers. These have been an incredible addition to the toolkit for our officers and have helped with recovering stolen vehicles and tracking down smash and grab robbery perpetrators and helping with other crime. And we do have a data retention policy and privacy policy. The goal is just to have the location of the vehicle and the license plate, and for the data only to be used during active investigations. And then every 90 days, that data is deleted if it's not being used in an investigation. So we are very serious about the privacy controls, but this has been an incredible tool because we don't have the staffing to be everywhere. And so it's really helped with follow-up investigations and holding people accountable for catalytic converter thefts and all the rest that you're hearing about. Let's keep going. Another here, this is a great partnership. We're actually paying for half of this, and Valley Water's paying for half of this, but getting bike patrols out there along our waterways. So I hear from so many residents that they don't feel comfortable using our public trails and being out in the community because of encampments and other kinds of challenges out in public space. And so getting our officers out of vehicles as much as possible. Again, this is a staffing issue. Our department is very committed to community policing. It's hard to do when you're so understaffed. So having officers who can both respond in a patrol car to a violent crime in progress, but also having that capacity to do bike patrols along our trails and foot patrols in our commercial districts is a priority. And so this represents some extra funding to be able to do that. And then I think this is the last one on safety. Right now, the single biggest challenge on the fire side of things is a real lack of trained paramedics. And so you have your EMTs, and then a paramedic is the next level of training. And we are significantly short. I don't have the latest count, but it's on the order of 65, 70 so paramedics. So I've put money, at least recommending money in the budget here for a lateral academy to try to attract medics from other places, and to beef up the staffing to be able to go recruit and train and retain medics. We're not yet at the point, but we do not want to get to the point where we're not able to send an engine out because it doesn't have a medic, which by law it needs to have. And we have some medics who are working more hours than they should be, frankly. And of course, when people are tired, they're more likely to make mistakes and to burn out and to go somewhere else. And so this is a critical staffing need for our fire department. Okay, so that's on making our city safer, and ultimately we can keep going here. Next issue, and this is probably the issue I hear the most about, which is encampments. And why don't we we'll go to the next slide here. There's a lot of data here, so I'm gonna just give you the highlights and try to interpret this a little bit. Right now, in any given moment, we have about 5,000 people living in unmanaged conditions outdoors. So that's tents, mostly encampments, but also vehicles, RVs and cars. And that number has grown dramatically, as you can see here on unsheltered. If you go back over a decade, we were at about 3,000. We made a little bit of progress, and then it really got worse and went to over 5,000. And what I find most interesting and frankly concerning about our numbers, and this is true across West Coast cities in particular, is that when you look at the data, our rate of homelessness is actually what you would expect. It is very in line with other large cities around the country and even around the world. I had the opportunity this year to meet the mayor of Dublin, Ireland, and their homeless population per capita is roughly the same. And I'll give you this one as an aside. I was chatting with her and I said, "Oh, how many homeless people do you have?" And it was 7,000 or something. And I said, "Wow, that's a lot. We're at about 5,000 who are outside. How many of your homeless individuals are unsheltered or living outside?" And she said, "Oh, it's horrible, probably 100 or so." And you go to Boston, and same story, it's about 3% of the homeless population. New York's a little bit higher, Chicago's a little bit higher than that, but they're all pretty much under 10%. Now, of course, what do they all have in common? Weather, cold winters. So we could just throw our hands up and say, well, they have cold winters and we don't. We've got great weather, so it's inevitable, but I don't buy that. If you step back and you look at what the winter forces these cities to do, frankly, it forces them to be really pragmatic. In fact, I asked the mayor of Dublin what they do, and well, they have a lot of shelters. Now, shelters aren't great, but what the weather forces these cities to do is build a lot of basic shelter, inpatient treatment centers, basic places for people to go. And of course, when it's freezing outside, nobody really wants to be out there, and so people are forced indoors. And so the challenge we face in a place with such good weather is, are we willing to build the safe places for people to go and to say, here are your options, but sorry, you can't just camp anywhere. You gotta come indoors. And I'm not saying we're gonna get there overnight, but our unsheltered rate is 75%. And in fact, just a few years ago, before we started building these new emergency interim units that I'm gonna talk about in a moment, we were up to 84% unsheltered. So I'm not saying it's a one size fits all. We'll talk about some of the options. And I don't think the answer is to just cram everybody into a big barracks-like room. In fact, the Ninth Circuit Court has had some concerns about that. There are some limitations there, but we've got to have some basic safe places for people to go. And then in my view, start requiring that people come inside. And I think most people will. Most of the research shows that actually a majority of the people living outside will come in if you offer them safe, dignified shelter. There are others who will not, and we can talk about that in the Q&A. So I also want to put this in perspective. We talk a lot about, every time there's a homicide, it's all over the news. Dominates the news that night. I was out at a press conference today talking about Vision Zero and traffic safety. We're talking a ton about traffic safety. But I just wanted to put those in perspective, because last year we had 246 people die on our streets. For the most part, probably almost exclusively prematurely, because they were living outdoors. And that's not to mention all of the other impacts environmentally, blight, safety, all the other impacts on the community. So let's talk about some solutions that are in the budget proposal. The first is, and this is the single biggest bet that I'm advocating for us to make. We have a source of funding called Measure E. It's a transfer tax, but it was passed to address affordable housing and homelessness related solutions, basically. And one of the things we've done in the last 3 years is we have built 500 units, roughly, of what we call emergency interim housing. They are these modular units. They're a private room with a door that locks, with a private little bathroom. They're a few hundred square feet. In one site, we're actually doing a little kitchenette, believe it or not. Some of them, two of the sites actually have shared bathroom facilities. We have seen that they work. We've had over 1,000 people served at these facilities. Over 70% remain housed today. A majority have graduated to permanent housing, and many of them, most of them, self-resolving by connecting with family, by getting work and income and finding a pathway, by moving back to wherever their home was, which in most cases is here locally. We have seen a majority of those people move into permanent housing out of these sites. They've also, and this I think is incredibly compelling, they have made the neighborhoods that they have gone into safer and cleaner, believe it or not. We compared calls for service the year before the site opened and the year after, and calls for 911 for crime and 311 for blight went down in aggregate, which actually, if you stop and think about it, makes sense. We built a site and we moved people out of encampments and RVs and into units where there's security, case management, counseling, job training, job placement, and program, services. And it actually made the neighborhoods better off. So the bottom line is we collectively face a choice. We can either build places for people to go, interim sites, safe parking sites, motel conversions, and then start getting people off the streets. And even in my view, it's acceptable to start enforcing anti-camping laws and saying you got to come inside, here are your options. Or we're kind of stuck with the status quo. Now, we are also building affordable housing, and I support building affordable housing. But I am of the opinion, not everyone agrees with me, that at the current cost of $1 million a door, and the current, more importantly, time to deploy of typically being about a 5-year process, the time and cost involved is just simply not going to allow us to catch up to the urgent crisis and the scale of the crisis on our streets today. And so I'm just being honest with you. I know a lot of people just want to hear that we're just going to tell people to move along, or we're going to hold them accountable, or we're going to get rid of the homeless or whatever else. The fastest, cheapest, but still humane way to deal with this, in my view, is to create transitional housing and safe parking sites and start requiring that people come out of unmanaged encampments into these safe spaces. And they're gonna have to be distributed around the city, to be fair, and we're gonna need other cities to do their part. So we'll talk more about that. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions. I mentioned the success of this. It just so happens that in the last count was the first time in 7 years we saw a reduction, modest though it was, in the number of people living outside after we had built 500 units of interim housing. And I mentioned the success metrics as well. We've also put a little bit of money in there to preserve our naturally occurring affordable housing, our mobile home parks, which are critical affordable housing that is perpetually at risk. And one of the big concerns I have heard from our thousands of residents who live in mobile home parks is that they don't feel protected. And so we've put in some money for our planning department to create a new overlay and make clear that we want that land to be preserved for those folks, and we do not want to see them displaced because of development pressure. Let's keep going. There's a program I love that the budget also calls on us to expand. And what it basically does is employ individuals in cleaning up the city, who are homeless individuals, cleaning up the city while giving them job training and job placement. In the last year, this program had just under 150 participants who took 350,000 pounds of trash off the streets, not to mention a lot of weed abatement and other cleanup efforts. And most importantly, the job training and placement led to over 1/3 of them securing permanent employment out of the program. Even one guy got a job at Tesla. I just went out and went weed whacking with them, and it was amazing. One guy had just gotten a job offer to be a trucker at $90,000 a year driving trucks. I met a woman who was starting an apprenticeship program to become an electrician. Not for everyone. Clearly, we have some folks on our streets with severe behavioral health issues for whom that's not going to be the answer, but there's a portion. And I asked them all in the program, how many people on the streets do you think could benefit from this program? And most of them said at least a quarter, a third, a meaningful number of people. So let's keep going. Prevention is another. The budget proposal that I put forward doubles the number of dollars we put into prevention. We have found that if we find someone who has just lost a job, is about to move into their car and become homeless, and we stabilize them for a few months of rent and help them with finding a new job, we are incredibly successful. 96% remain housed. And we have not had, believe it or not, this is what I was worried about, we actually have had almost no one come back and need money again within the time window of a few years that we looked at. We're actually stabilizing people, keeping them housed, investing in getting them to some self-sufficiency, and then they're remaining there. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say. So that's another priority in the budget. And then putting some money into just being better at collecting data, reporting, analyzing program performance, having somebody embedded with the county to track there's a system that we use to kind of have good data on our homeless population, and bringing greater transparency to the public to show you the results so that you can hold us accountable for funding the programs that are actually working. And then I want to say one other thing on this, because it's not in the budget, but I have been talking a lot about it. I have had a lot of meetings in my first 4 months as mayor, both in Sacramento and with our county leaders, specifically addressing behavioral health issues. We know that both a contributor to homelessness and a barrier to getting out of homelessness are substance abuse issues, mental illness, PTSD, a whole range of challenges. And similar to the broader homeless issue, we need places for people to go. I was literally just in a meeting today with the DA, with the judge, with the sheriff, with the police chief, and the consensus around the table was, we don't have places for people to go. For drug treatment, for mental health care, even as an accountability mechanism. Somebody's committing low-level crime, we have judges who would love to be able to sentence them into a secure drug treatment program, but we don't have that option today in our county. So that, of course, is going to take the county and some changes to state law, but I want everyone to know the city is a willing partner and we're ready to help facilitate those kinds of solutions because our community needs it and we have far too few of them. You probably all remember Agnew's, and not that we necessarily want to go back to building Agnew's, but we need the 21st century version of inpatient care for addiction and mental illness, and the city needs to come to the table and be willing to look at land and speeding up permitting and reducing fees and otherwise supporting that. I'm happy to talk more about that in the Q&A as well. Let's talk about the final priority, cleaning up the city. Probably don't need to see a big chart to know that we have a problem. You drive around the city, you see it every day. I've been out every weekend since getting elected with what has typically been 50 to 150 volunteers in different neighborhoods across the city doing beautification projects and litter pickup. I've seen some of you out at those, and I appreciate your involvement. But we're going to need to do a lot more than just volunteer cleanups. If we dive in here, the single biggest investment here is taking something that we effectively piloted, which is city staff plus contractors going out and doing enhanced cleanups and regular trash pickup at our encampments, going out and identifying highly blighted areas. And this team can coordinate with Caltrans and do big projects where you've got a bunch of abandoned, burned out vehicles and they can clear them out of there, big graffiti abatements. And so really making this a permanent, this pilot has been incredibly successful, making it permanent, but also being able to expand on some of our more targeted programs. And I'm gonna speak to a couple of those programs next. So why don't we keep going? Also, how do you get Beautify San Jose services 311? And one of the things I called out in the budget is investing in this system. We've made some great strides, but my vision is that you should be able to go anywhere in our city and with an app on your phone that should not log you out every time you use it, which is still happening to me, you should be able to snap a photo of a pothole, graffiti, illegal dumping, a street light that's out. You should also be able to request basic services like free junk pickup at your curb, and with a click, have it routed to the right department. We should know who you are. We should be able to deliver the service and send you a follow-up via a push notification for when it's happening and even a photo of it being completed. We have a lot of the building blocks, but the experience is not nearly that seamless. And we still have a long way to go. A third of people who use 311 still have a negative experience. And so I really want us to, as the capital of Silicon Valley, invest in technology solutions. Basic city services should be at your fingertips, and they should be reliably delivered with high quality. And that's how I imagine everyone requesting those Beautify SJ services in your neighborhood. So we can talk more about that, but beautify your block. Okay, so what this is showing, which is concerning, but is probably not too surprising, I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it, is we've seen a real decline in the number of individuals citywide who have been involved in cleanup and beautification projects. And one of the things that with what we hope will be a grant from the governor's office in Sacramento is an investment that I'd like to use to reinvigorate our neighborhood associations and turn this around, is what we're calling Beautify Your Block. And the idea is to run a citywide program through our neighborhood associations with training, with t-shirts, with supplies, bringing city staff out, getting neighborhoods organized to be able to address the basic blight and beautification issues in their neighborhood, getting certified to do graffiti removal, having the tools to do trash pickup and know where to drop the bags, having maybe getting certified to be able to plant trees in pre-designated areas, maybe in partnership with your council office. There's still a lot to figure out. We're working with the governor's office to design a program. Part of the goal would be to build community through beautification, because we know that neighborhoods where people are connected to one another are happier, safer places that just have better outcomes. So that's the vision for it. It's some seed money to do a pilot, but welcome your input. It is not fully designed at this point, and we're, like I said, half of the funding would be coming from the governor's office, assuming we get the grant for that. Okay, clean gateways. This is something else I'd like to pilot, and we have a lot of excitement from city staff to do this. This is really a civic pride and economic competitiveness issue. When you drive into San Jose today, you know you're in San Jose, and not in a good way. There are far too many on-ramps and off-ramps that look like this photo on the left. And I want to make a targeted push around a half dozen key gateways, probably to start mostly around downtown, because right now, downtown disproportionately, along with North San Jose, generates the tax revenue that we use to fund all of the services in our neighborhoods. We have 72 vacant storefronts in downtown. We have a 25% vacancy rate in our commercial property. We have residents and tourists who don't want to go downtown. And a lot of it is just about cleanliness and safety. And so having those foot patrols and cleaning up our freeway gateways should start to create a virtuous cycle in which we can bring back the conventions and bring back the big events and bring back the tourists and get that economic engine going again, so that we have the tax revenue to expand services in all of our neighborhoods. And of course, I'd like to expand that to every major gateway, every major intersection and corridor across the city, if it works. We're almost there. Cash for trash. This is kind of a clever program. Our encampments, of course, are a very large source of trash. What this program does is pay homeless individuals a nominal fee, $4 a bag, to bag up their trash and put it at pre-designated sites for weekly pickup. And it has diverted tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds of trash, primarily out of our creeks and from flowing out to the bay. It's a nominal fee. And I don't think it is the be-all, end-all, but as long as we've got 5,000 people living outside, we need help to manage the trash. And so that is one program for doing that, which the budget message calls on us to expand. Okay, this is, since the city manager's message came out, this is the first community budget meeting we've had, so they're all new slides, or mostly new slides. It's my first time through this version of it. We have many more meetings, so if you want to join us for another one, if your questions aren't fully answered tonight, we'll have many more. And if we go to the next slide, we'll put that back up for folks. But if you would like, you can sign up for our newsletter and get budget updates via that QR code. That'll give you a very simple form. It should just be first name, last name, email, and then we'll send updates on the budget process if you want to come in and speak at City Council or join one of our community budget meetings. So, in summary, and then we'll open it up to your questions, there are a lot of things that we want to do as a city. I think there are a few things we really need to do. And what I have heard over and over again from residents is immense frustration with a few foundational issues: homelessness, blight, crime. My bet, and what I hope will be our strategy as a city, is that if we invest up front more resources and more of our creativity and focus, truly focus our city staff on a few foundational issues, like the ones I just outlined, we will start to turn the corner on those issues. We will start to see our small businesses thrive again. We'll start to see our residents want to spend more time and money in our city. We may start to see larger employers want to move and expand within our city once again. We'll see tax revenue go up, and we'll be in a position to have a virtuous cycle in which we can invest in better park maintenance and more trails and more after-school programming and 7 days a week of library hours and all the things that we all want. And right now, because of our low revenue and our high debt and our very constrained budget, we're just trying, our typical failure mode is we try to spread the money across 50 different priorities, and then everybody yells at us the next year and says, why didn't anything get better? And so I'm trying to offer folks a different strategy, but I hope it leads to us actually being able to do a heck of a lot more in a lot of other areas that I didn't talk about tonight. So that's my theory of the case and where I think we ought to focus. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen. I hope I didn't overwhelm you with all those slides. I'd love to open it up to your questions before Councilmember Cohen gives the rebuttal. And then, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Actually, no, I will say, as I mentioned, Councilmember Cohen actually was involved, and we're in the same, what's called a Brown Act group. So we actually worked together on the budget message, and he gave me a lot of good feedback that I incorporated into the March message. All right, I saw a hand go up over here. Go ahead.
Okay, first, I'm aligned with those priorities, so I want to say thank you because I feel like I'm heard. I feel like those are also my priorities, so thank you for that. Two, I want to thank the police officers for being here and let you guys know that we appreciate you. I know that's going to be hard to recruit because things are not looking good as far as how we're, how the society is looking at policing, but we need cops. We need them to protect us and to help us get through some of the stuff going on. So that's that. And then the other thing was the homelessness. It sounds like a lot of good things are happening with the interim housing, it looks like. I know there was a lot of controversy. The question I have is, that sounds like a good program for people who are able to get a hand up and get going and move forward. What I'm more concerned about is drugs, alcohol, and mental illness. That's the scarier part. I'm not scared of people who are just trying to figure out, how to get out of the issue. I'm scared of people who are talking to themselves or chasing me or making me feel really uncomfortable. And so that's the part that I'm concerned about because it didn't seem like that was part of the plan.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear what we're doing for that.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments and I appreciate you calling that out. And it weighs on me very heavily. As I mentioned today, I was in a meeting today with DA, sheriff, judges, others talking about this very issue. It's a huge gap. Now you'll notice I didn't put hospitals in there. I didn't put schools in there. I didn't put mental health care. And the reason for that is that we as a city do not have the funding or legal jurisdiction to do those things. That's not to say we can't help. And certainly as your mayor, I am an advocate on these issues. And I will speak specifically to a few of the things I think we can do as voters. But hospitals, mental health care, drug treatment, foster care system, prison, reentry programs is all at the county and state level. And of course, our schools and education system is your school board, county board, and the state. So yes, I'm trying to focus on the piece of this puzzle that we have the funding and legal jurisdiction to address, which is getting people into basic shelter and ensuring some level of law enforcement and public safety. But we need the rest of the system to work with us. I have been a huge proponent of Senator Susan Eggman's SB 43. The quick backstory, and I don't want to give you a long lecture, but in the 60s and 70s, we had a very robust mental health hospital system. I mentioned Agnew's. We had over 300 beds for inpatient, what they called psych beds, mental health beds, for every 100,000 people. Anybody want to guess how many we have today statewide? It's about 12. That's roughly, the numbers, maybe it's up a little bit. Last I checked, not like 6 months ago, it was 12. So it was 300 to 12. We went through a long period of deinstitutionalization. It was an interesting coming together of fiscal conservatives who felt the system was far too expensive and civil liberties advocates who felt that people were being locked up against their will and that there wasn't proper oversight and there were abuses of the system. In my view, the pendulum swung far too far to one end. Senator Eggman, who is herself a clinician, has written a bill that would modify those changes that were made in 1967. It's called the Lanterman-Petrus Shore Act. Part of what it says is that you can only be conserved, meaning brought in against your will for treatment, if you are gravely disabled. And the current interpretation of that is essentially that someone has to say that they have to verbalize that they want to hurt themselves or hurt someone else. And that's just for the first step to go in for what's called a 72-hour hold. And then in most cases, at most, that'll turn into 14 days. Now we know, anybody who's had experience with friends or family members, as I have had with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, with severe addiction, especially to a substance like methamphetamine, where there's no pharmacological substitute, 14 days isn't going to cut it. And that's kind of max right now for most people. The nearest truly secure mental health hospital for a long-term stay is in Napa County, and it's full. So we are going to need changes to state laws. What SB 43 would do is expand the definition of gravely disabled to include people who are dealing with severe substance abuse and are living on the streets and unable to make decisions about their self-care. It would include a wider range of other mental health disorders, but it would have oversight. It would allow a judge to mandate them into inpatient care for a period of time that would be a year or less, with opportunities to then graduate out of the program. Now, there's a lot of questions about, we don't have the beds, so you can change the law to make it possible to compel people to get care. You also got to build the beds. So that's why something I put in my budget message is, hey, the city should look at our land use authority. Can we speed up permitting? Can we drop fees? What can we do to help build this kind of facility? Because we're going to need it. Same goes for criminal justice. And what we have seen, I was just looking at the data today, again, in that meeting I referenced. In just the last 9 months, we've had 64 individuals in San Jose who have been arrested or cited 4 or more times each, and 75% of them have been arrested or cited numerous times in the prior couple of years. It's a revolving door around low-level, typically nonviolent crime, because there's no alternative. The judges and state law make it really hard now to jail someone for nonviolent, low-level crime, and there's no alternative accountability mechanism. In my view, you should be able to sentence somebody into a drug treatment program. But we literally don't have the facilities or the laws to do what I'm describing, even though it sounds like common sense. And we got to make sure that as we fix this, and I've been one of the loudest advocates now kind of in the state on these issues. I've been up to Sacramento lobbying 3 times now on it. As we fix it, we got to make sure we don't swing the pendulum so far to the other side that we go right back to the problems we had, right? So I know it's a long-winded answer, but it's a very complex issue. We have barriers in state laws. My newsletter, by the way, if you sign up for it, outlines these on a bi-weekly basis. I go through a lot of detail on how you can advocate to your state legislators and your county supervisors, because it's a system. It's not something the city can solve alone. I know that's frustrating, but that's the truth. Yeah, I saw a hand, where was it? Yes, hi.
Hi, thank you for coming, and also please, man, we all support you guys. Thank you for bringing the safety for our city. In here, I just want to ask, according to the data, last year and this year, some people were killed, have been killed on the street, especially for the hit and run. So I really hope the city can create some rules or something, make sure we have a traffic light on or camera to monitor the traffic and make sure people can walk safe on the street. And especially I hope some street you can install some bumper, slow the driver speed, make sure people are safe, especially for the Piedmont and the Surrey Road here. In 2 years, I think 1 person was killed last year, and just 1 week ago, some big accident happened here. I really hope the city can take some measure to control this situation. Last year, a lot of people were killed on the street. I really don't want to happen again, more than the home side. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just on the traffic safety point, you raise a great point. As I mentioned earlier, as I showed in the slide, we have more traffic fatalities than we have homicides in our city every year. We actually launched an initiative today in the city of San Jose called Slow Down San Jose. And it's all about raising awareness. Our strategy here is really a 3-pronged approach to addressing traffic safety. One, of course, is enforcement. I talked about police staffing and cameras. Those are tools for being able to enforce the laws that we have. Another is the built environment, protected bike lanes and signage and protected crosswalks and better lighting and all the changes we can make to the physical environment to make it safer. And the third is what we announced today, which is public education and awareness, reminding people that saving a minute is not worth costing a life. People have got to slow down. Just over 1/3 of our traffic fatalities last year were primarily caused by speeding. And it seems that it got a lot worse during the pandemic. I don't quite know why. Maybe the roads were clearer and people could go faster. Maybe we were all just more stressed out. I don't know. But what I do know is that we have seen a rising number of traffic fatalities, and we are pursuing a three-pronged approach of enforcement, education, and infrastructure improvements to try to address it. One final thing I'll say is specifically speed safety cameras, if you will. This is a tool that is used in cities and states across the country and really countries around the world. We have not used them in the state of California. This is currently in the state legislature. It's SB 645, I believe. This is something that'll be in my newsletter on Sunday. I've been advocating for passing this, and for the first time, we actually have a lot of law enforcement agencies, including our own Police Officers Association in San Jose, on board with these speed safety cameras. They have been shown in other cities when deployed in speeding hotspots to reduce fatalities by over 50%. The way that it works is we put out a camera, it only snaps photos, it's just getting speed and license plate numbers. For the first 6 months where we deploy them, we will simply mail a warning. We'll just say, we've installed new cameras, this is a speeding hotspot, and you were speeding, and in the future you may get a ticket if you're doing it again. And then after 6 months, we will actually just mail people tickets. This is if it passes in Sacramento and we're allowed to use these cameras. Again, over a 50% reduction in crashes, injuries, fatalities where these have been deployed. And we've been a real laggard as a state in this, but I'm hopeful that we're gonna finally have that tool. Sure. Oh yeah, let's get you the mic.
In regards to trash pickup, you were saying that you are paying the homeless to help with that. I think it's a great plan. I was wondering, in the past, this was before COVID, they used inmates actually from the facility in Milpitas to do that. Is that still in the planning stages to restart that, or has that stopped?
I've actually been wondering the same thing myself, and I will have to take a note to follow up and find out. I've been wondering, I don't know the status of that program. It isn't a city program, but I'm also interested. I was just thinking about it the other day as I was driving around. So Stephen, if we can take a note to make sure to follow up on that, and if you'd like to give us your email, we can get you an answer. I'm not aware of it being a current program. I haven't heard anything about it, but I do recall that I know that it used to be, and we can ask around and find out what the status is. Thanks for the question. And I know there was a question immediately behind you. Hi there. Oh yeah, let's use the mic. There you go.
I thought I was loud enough. I didn't need a mic. I live here in the Berryessa area, and we have a lot of problem with people doing donuts.
Yeah.
Now, we can't everyone says, well, we need to put speed bumps. Well, we can't put speed bumps because, as my neighbor who's an ex-firefighter said, that causes problems when firefighters are going code 3 to a fire, and you want them to slow down, or do you want them to get there? But yesterday I was going through San Francisco, and I saw in intersections, not in the middle of the intersection, but as you go up to the intersection, there were like pylons in the middle, separating the lanes.
Mm-hmm.
And the actual intersection itself was empty. Something like that, it seems like would help to curb the people doing the donuts, because if they do the donuts, they're gonna run into an obstruction.
Right.
Is that something that we could maybe investigate doing?
Absolutely, it's a great question, and your council member may want to chime in as well. We've been doing quite a bit in the last few years with what we call quick build infrastructure. One of the projects down in the district I used to represent that has been designed but not deployed yet is a quick build roundabout in a big intersection where there are constant donuts for that very reason. The reason they call them quick build is building proper permanent infrastructure with cement and rebar and sign, whatever else can run into the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. What you're talking about where they put out substantial, but ultimately probably plastic or maybe metal, yeah, could be. So finding different changes in the physical environment of the street is exactly the kind of thing we're trying to do. It's a really big city. So this year alone, we're working on 200 traffic safety improvements, many of them small crosswalks and speed bumps. The other thing I would just note is that we have some other solutions that could work for fire, and I think we need to do some more investigation. There's something called dots that are sort of like a laminate on the street that only bother you if you're going significantly over the speed limit, but if you are, it shakes your vehicle because it lifts the road. It's very annoying to speeders and used in other cities. I think we've tried them a little bit here. Another is you will see some of these speed humps. I saw these in San Francisco recently as well, where they actually cut out the spaces that are the exact width for the fire engines specifically. So still probably annoying for other emergency response, probably not a perfect solution, but could be appropriate in some. That's clever. Yeah, we're doing some of that. I don't know if you've looked into some of the street safety stuff.
Yeah, we're actually focused quite a bit on that in this district. This is a big problem everywhere. There's two levels of the problem. One is sideshow activity, which is the more organized people who are coming in groups and doing that. Now the city we've passed some ordinances and done some things to crack down on that particular activity. The good news is people have learned San Jose is not a welcoming place for that, and most of them are going to other neighboring jurisdictions or other places to do it, and we've actually seen a significant drop in that organized sideshow activity. Now the individuals who want to go out and have fun and spin a couple donuts in an intersection are the things that we're focusing on now. What are the intersections that are most impacted? The problem is there's hundreds of intersections, right? So go and take a look at what we did at Flickinger and Sierra, where we actually put in dividers all the way up to the corner and put dots in the intersection to prevent donuts there. Of course, if you now go 2 blocks north to another big intersection, the folks are doing it 2 blocks north. So we can chase them around the city. We're doing the same kind of installation at White and Piedmont coming later this year. That's been a major intersection for donuts. We're doing that same kind of bollards and dots in that intersection. We're also trying to figure out how to slow down traffic on Cropley because there's a lot of donuts there. We're going to put in a crosswalk in the middle to slow traffic down, but again, getting every intersection is hard. But what we do is we take a list of the most impacted intersections and we're trying to slow traffic down to those intersections. We're working bit by bit. We did it also at Lundy and Junction up in North San Jose, kind of near the Ringwood area. You can go down Ringwood Drive and see the dividers all the way down the middle of Ringwood Drive. So we're trying it in as many locations as we can, but it takes our transportation department time to deploy to all these different locations. But we're in our district actually doing quite a bit of that kind of improvement. Mostly from calls. I mean, the number of accidents is still low as a result of that. I mean, people do the donuts and leave. We get, I drive around the district and I see the intersections where there's a lot of tire marks on the street, but also we get calls. We know where the most active area is. Let our office know. As I said, the problem is, in reality, what I'd love to do is put in an island in every intersection in the district so that it couldn't be possible, but that'll take years and years to complete. So.
Hi, I wanted to say that I'm totally opposed to Measure E funds being used, being taken away from affordable housing and used for the purposes that you are talking about. I've had a lot of community experience with low-income people who are on the verge of homelessness or have fallen into homelessness, and the only thing that gets them out of it permanently is actual affordable housing and not just this place or that place that they can go for a little bit of time. Also, I wanted to mention that There is an alternative view on this, which was published in the San Jose Spotlight about San Jose's homeless solution is Smoke and Mirrors by Sandy Perry. I can't say it any better than he did. So please Google it, go to Spotlight, San Jose homelessness, Smoke and Mirrors, because we really need to focus on permanently housing people and not diverting funds from Measure E. Thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate the comment. I think the challenge we're facing with affordable housing right now is, and I did read Sandy's piece, it had some factual inaccuracies in it, but I've certainly had conversations with a number of advocates for both the homeless and for affordable housing that don't like the idea of shifting more of the Measure E monies to more immediate, faster, and less expensive solutions. There are a couple challenges with the making affordable housing our primary bet. And there is good reason, by the way, that affordable housing has been such a focus. There's something called Housing First that really came out of about 15, 20 years ago. There was a lot of research where cities were looking at their shelters and saying, these aren't working. People don't want to go in, they're failing out of them, and they're just caught in this endless cycle of being on the streets and being in shelters. And what that research found was, and it really, Salt Lake City was an early adopter, there were a few other cities, but that was kind of the main one the research looked at, found that if you got somebody into an apartment permanently, they got better outcomes. They would stay housed longer, they'd be more likely to stick to a drug treatment program, and so on and so forth. Now, the challenge is, in Salt Lake City, the land is incredibly abundant. You can get a permit in a couple months, labor costs are cheap, and their homeless population was a few hundred people. And what we found is that as we in more expensive coastal cities have gone all in on housing first and interpreted it as needing to build brand new apartments at $1 million a door, it's certainly helped the lucky few who have gotten those apartments, but it hasn't been scaling to meet the need. And so the average affordable housing building is now costing over $1 million a door. We just approved one at the city for $1.1 million a door. And they're taking 5 to 6 years to build. And so it's not as immediate or scalable of a solution, which is a challenge. The good news is with the prefabricated modular units that I'm describing, we're actually finding a middle ground. We're no longer building congregate shelter. We're no longer cramming people into a big barracks in unsafe conditions. We're giving people a private apartment. It's basically affordable housing, if you will. Now, it's not the goal to keep somebody in one of those units for years on end, but somebody could live there for 2 or 3 or 4 years as they turn their lives around. And actually, as we talk to many of the most effective operators in our region, like Life Moves, they'll tell you, people, even in interim housing, often need, the right period of time is about 2 years. The right community size is about 150 to 200 people, and many people need up to about 2 years at an interim site to really get a handle on their behavioral health issues, to get the job training, to get that job, and to really stabilize and save some money. It's not meant to be a one-size-fits-all, but the idea is with the prefab modular units, which are private rooms, like an affordable apartment, a room with a door that closes, a private bathroom, even a kitchenette in some cases, or a shared kitchen with multiple stoves where people can cook. You have a sense of community, you have a private space. And the amazing thing is the outcomes, which is really what we should care about, is the outcomes are quite good. We're keeping people housed, we're graduating people to permanent housing. We aren't seeing that same cycle that was criticized when housing first came around 15, 20 years ago, when we were trying to shove people into these barracks-like facilities with no services. And my argument would be that when the alternative is people living in tents and cars and dying on our streets, waiting for $1 million a door and 5 years to build is not humane and not particularly effective, and that we've got to scale up dignified housing faster. Now, I don't think it's either or. I support affordable housing bonds. They're talking about a big regional affordable housing bond, and the great thing about that is it would get Los Gatos and Saratoga and Monte Sereno and Cupertino in on the game, because they'd be taxed as well. It wouldn't just be on us to fund these. And in fact, we've set aside in the budget $35 million to fund the next 500 units of permanent affordable units that are coming to the city and will cost $1 million a door. That includes funding from the city, the state, and the county. But I just think there's a trade-off we face between scale and cost effectiveness and speed of deployment. In contrast, these modular interim units I'm describing can be built for 100, 150,000 a unit and built in 12 months. We're also looking, by the way, at using some of those dollars for safe parking. And look, we could make the argument, well, the only solution is permanent affordable housing, but when you have hundreds of RVs all over the city that are broken down and negatively impacting everybody, I would rather have the short-term trade-off of creating a few safe parking sites around the city and giving people a place to go with services and giving them opportunities to get out of the conditions that they're in. So there's no perfect solution. The truth is there's always trade-offs. There's no nefarious agenda here. But as I look at the math and talk to experts about this, I think we've got to find a balance here where we don't just say that we got to build a brand new affordable $1 million apartment for every person who needs it, because it's not real scalable. I'll end on this point, and I know your councilman wants to jump in. The state, we are about to submit to the state our housing plan, our housing element it's called, for the next 8 years. The state is asking us to set a target of building 34,000 affordable units in San Jose. At $1 million a door of public subsidy, because right now the model, we haven't innovated enough. I think we have to figure out how to get more private capital involved in affordable housing. But right now, at $1 million a door of mostly public subsidy, that would be a $34 billion price tag just in San Jose. And even the discussion we're having about the big regional housing measure, they're talking about $10 billion for all 9 counties. And so I just think if we want to end street homelessness, we're going to need one set of strategies. If we want to address the affordable housing gap for everyone, it's going to be a lot more money and a lot more time, and that's also very laudable. But I don't think we should confuse that strategy with ending street homelessness today and the crisis we see on our streets. And so there is a trade-off that we face. Council member, I filibustered enough, go ahead.
This is going to probably be the biggest conversation the council has going forward on the budget. It's not, as the mayor said, it's not an either or, but the question will be, what is the right balance of money for each of those 2 buckets? And we're going to still have discussions about coming to that conclusion. I will say, the budget proposal does ask for a portion to be moved into what I think are important short-term solutions, but we also know that without the long-term housing places for people to go, short-term solutions really don't end up working in the long run, because once they're done there, they have to have a place to go. But those look like a lot of different things. Some of it is money that we've been getting to convert motel rooms into permanent housing. Some of it is building new construction. Some of it is the inclusionary housing that we're now going to require all the North San Jose developments to have. 20% of all the units that go into North San Jose will be affordable. And so I'm going to continue to push to make sure in my district that happens, and we get affordable housing built in the North San Jose developments that are coming in the future. So we're going to have multiple approaches to that. There is a problem with right now in that how long it takes to build it. The cost is one item, but we have a number of these units that have been approved, and it will take 3, 4, 5, 6 years to build them. They're coming. In the meantime, the frustration that many of us have is we don't really have a short-term place for people to go. We're behind, in my opinion, on the interim housing as well. So I think we need both. We're going to need to, I think, invest just this one time this year to build out those 1,000 units of interim housing so that in the next year, we can, as the new projects begin to get built, we can start to fund additional projects. But we're going to have money in this budget for both at the end of this process.
Okay, I just saw more hands go up. I'm told that we're basically at time, so we can try to do a lightning round and then we can take it offline. Again, my email is mayor@sanjoseca.gov. And if you sign up there, you will get every other week, bi-weekly updates, and you can hit reply to that email as well and reach me. So we can try to do a quick lightning round. Stephen, you've got that mic handy. Can we keep the questions to 10 seconds, and I'll try to keep my answers very short?
My question is regarding homelessness. You mentioned that the majority of homeless would opt into a tiny home type situation. But there's a portion, apparently, that would not.
Correct.
So let me use the guy that lives on Capitol Avenue that's homeless as an example. He lives on Capitol near the corner of Penitencia and Gilchrist Drive. He's put up his little cement barriers around it, and he's got plants and he waters them. And let's just say, for example, he would decide that he did not want to move into a tiny house, even if it was available. What happens to somebody like that if they won't accept any form of housing?
Yeah, great question, and I'm not going to be able to give it a sufficient answer, but here's my basic philosophy. I believe, and again, they're all trade-offs, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. I believe we should build basic but dignified shelter for everyone who needs it. We should build inpatient treatment facilities for both mental illness and addiction, and then we should begin enforcing our no camping zones. And what the research shows is that when you give people dignified options, like a quick build apartment or a tiny home, if you want to call it that, a little modular unit, or a treatment option, a significant proportion, in many cases, 70, 80% of people will accept it. But you have this other portion that won't. And the state of California does not criminalize homelessness. So the only alternative is that you enforce a no encampment zone and you say you can't camp here, but these are your options. And once again, you can't camp here, but these are your options. It's called abatement. I don't like abatements. They make people move around, they waste taxpayer money, people lose their belongings. I don't think abating encampments is a great answer, and I don't think we should be doing it unless we have options for people. But I think as we create safe, dignified indoor places for people to go, we're within our right as a city to start enforcing no encampment zones in areas and saying, here are your options. There's got to be balance. We have a responsibility for providing basic shelter and treatment for those who are vulnerable and need it, and individuals have a responsibility at a minimum for coming indoors. And I think there has to be a balance of responsibility if we're ever going to move our state forward on this issue. All right, I know we're very tight on time. I don't mind taking a few more, but I know I don't want to hold up your neighborhood association or the community center here. We will get to your question. I see a gentleman holding a mic, so those are going to be the last two. We'll keep them quick. Go ahead.
Okay. So I know everyone probably in the news has heard about, how like the whole Google, the 80-acre like campus and all that stuff, right? Like how it's like been halted or whatever. Is there going to be some sort of use for that land that's like halted, that they're not building or whatever, or are they going to be taxed for them like slowing down like building or anything like that? Like, is there some sort of like way that we can utilize that land right now since they're not utilizing it themselves?
For Google, yeah, so great question. It is unfortunate that the economic reality we're in, Google is not hiring. In fact, pretty much all of the big internet companies are reducing headcount right now. And so what that means is they are not at the moment planning to go build out a new campus for employees. They're not in growth mode, they're retrenching. And like any other private property owner, I mean, Google gave us land for affordable housing that we're using now. They put $6.5 million into a community. We will definitely get to the question. They fronted the city $6.5 million to invest in the community. They've been an incredible partner, but like any other private property owner, we don't get to dictate to them when they build their buildings. They own that land. Most of that land is currently being used for parking. It's near the train station and the SAP Center, and it's continuing under the current use. If over time they decide that they're not going to have as big of a campus, that land could be bought by others and used for other purposes, but we are at the whim ultimately of the economy. Are companies growing or not? Do people want to hire here? Can people afford to live here? Those big issues are really beyond our control. So we got a great deal for the city, but it really is premised on the idea that they're going to build that campus, and that's based on their need to hire. And right now they don't have a need to hire. So that campus has been slowed down. I am hopeful. It's a very solid company. We are the center of innovation. I am very hopeful that in the years ahead, they're going to build out that campus as envisioned. And just last point on this, and then we'll come to our final question. We always believed, and I knew from day one that the Google campus was going to take anywhere from 10 to 20 years to build out. It's a big long-term vision. It's going to be delivered slower than we thought, unfortunately. Okay, our final question.
Thank you. I have been prepared this question for 2 days. And I have written many drafts, and because I have come across many places for this kind of meeting, I'm always asked to not ask a question because they said, you know, the time is short and you have to, you know, you can give me some answers, but I have to because I have been thinking about this for so long time about homelessness. Because we are passionate people. We have compassion to our fellow human beings. We have to take care of them. But you know, according to all the reports, we have abstract idea of homelessness. Do we know them? We don't know. We don't where they are coming from. There are almost 5,000 here right now. But why they come from where and they come so quickly? And if, for example, like my home, I have just like $2,000 and then I have to support my family and I want to take care of one in the street, right? And I can spare 1 bedroom for them, right? But I have my, you know, financials. I don't have much money, but I think maybe if, as a community, if we get to know these people, we might have more compassion. Our capacity will be enlarged. And my point is that the people who are in the street who need help and the community, they will welcome them, should get together, should meet each other. And the community should have the right to have someone in our community and then do not want other people to have our community. And in this way, both parts, you know, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, because
Would it be possible for us to, I want to let people wrap up. I would love to share with you some of the data we have from, we go out and do interviews with the homeless. I spend a lot of time in our encampments. I'd also love to share with you some of the organizations who work directly with our unhoused community. So there are some opportunities to get to know our homeless residents.
Yeah, but I have to say is that we have limitation. Our financial have limitation, right? We cannot take as many as possible. So maybe it's a better idea that we can divide these people to not assign. I don't know how to do that, but something related to a certain community.
Well, one thing I just want to note for everyone, and I'm happy to follow up, when we do the census and we go out and count and interview our homeless population, what we find is about 84%, roughly, of our homeless population was last living at an address in our county. And so the biggest predictor of homelessness is the imbalance of jobs to housing, of incomes to rent. It's macroeconomic issues.
That's my point.
Okay.
So I think every community have to take care of their homeless people. So that's what, because if you build very good things and many people want to come, right, from other places, and do we have enough money to take care of all that people?
No, but I guess what I'm saying is what we're finding is it does happen occasionally. It is not the case that most of the homeless people just decided that it was a great idea to come be homeless in San Jose. Most of our homeless population was last living locally.
Yeah.
And we can't do it alone. We're going to need the whole state to solve this problem, and it's going to take housing and mental health care and addiction treatment and a whole bunch of things. But I think we're going to have to take this conversation offline. I'd be happy to talk to you a little more, but I want to let folks get on with their evening. Thank you all so much for taking the time to be here. Really, really appreciate it. And thanks to Linda and the team for hosting us. Thank you.
Oh, So we need able-bodied people to help put the chairs away because we're supposed to be out of here by 9. So I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming tonight.